Okay, I think it's probably time to get started. Welcome again to our Fundamentals webinar series. As I mentioned at the beginning there, we're going to be talking about environment comparison. My name is Andrea Sorensen, and I'm the head of marketing here at Strongpoint. Thank you, everybody, for making time out of your busy day to spend it with us for probably about 45 minutes or so. We'll be mindful of your time. There's some great content we're going to go through, and as an introduction to what environment comparison is and why you should be concerned about using this feature. And quickly following on that, we'll be going through a live demonstration of how environment comparison works. Don't forget again to visit our YouTube channel to listen to some of our previous webinars. There's loads of them loaded up there, lots of great content. All right, let's get started. I'm very happy to introduce Romana Henningham and Valerie Callahan to this webinar today. They're going to lead us through. Primarily, Romana is going to take us through things, and Valerie's here for backup. Both are amazing customer success consultants, so I think many of you on the call probably have worked with either one of them or somebody else in the customer success team. They are super savvy in Strongpoint systems. So you're in great hands as we walk through environment comparison, and I'm going to hand it over to Romana right now. Over to you, Romana.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to everyone for joining our series today. As Andrea mentioned, we will be going over environment comparison and some of the different things that are offered in this feature. On our agenda today, we'll be covering an overview of how the tool works. Then we'll discuss briefly about the comparison types and some of the scenarios in which you can use them. We'll also talk a little bit about our filtering options, deployment validation, and as well as how you communicate your results with developers. After that, we'll have a full walkthrough. We'll show you how to do that environment comparison using the change management portion in our account and show you what the results typically look like. So without any further ado, let's get right to it. So once the spiders have been deployed in your account and both accounts are up to date and fully documented, you're then ready to do your environment comparison. And this is kind of a prerequisite to running the environment compare. We do require that your account is fully documented. So Strongpoint compares the customization records between any two accounts using their script ID. Okay, the system doesn't compare the actual object itself within NetSuite, which is why we require that your account is documented and up to date, and that the spiders are running within the account. Next thing is that we compare all customization types except for custom records and a few other record types due largely to NetSuite limitations that we have within the system. And the third thing is that Strongpoint environment compare can be done two ways, either via the change request, which we'll be walking through our demo today, or you can do it as a standalone. Let's move on to the comparison types. So the tool offers two different comparison types. One is the target newer than source. The target newer than source pulls customizations that have change logs created after the change after date. And you'll see this again while I walk through the demo. Secondly, the results only includes records with changes that are more recent in the target account. Okay, and the other thing is that this type provides the option to run a diff for its results. The second comparison type is a diff or differential. This compares the customization records, and results are based on the entire account regardless of the date that is specified. Okay, now let's move to scenarios. So there are a few scenarios in which you would want to use environment comparison just to validate your data. One is the pre-migration check, and within that, we do advise that you use the target newer than source. This will ensure that the updated versions of the objects in the target is not overwritten by your deployment. So that target newer than source will alert you to anything that is newer in your target account, typically your production, and make sure that that information is not overwritten. Secondly, you can use it when doing a post-migration check. So after you've done your deployment, again, typically to your production account, you would want to run a diff comparison. And this will ensure that all changes were deployed completely and correctly. And if it is that you missed anything during your migration, this diff comparison will alert you to that. So in cases where you are going through a NetSuite implementation or you're doing a large deployment and you bundled hundreds or thousands of objects to move them from your sandbox to your prod, we do advise that you run that diff comparison, because there's no other way to alert you to any objects that may potentially be missing or may not have been brought over during your migration. And the third one is a pre-sandbox refresh. And again, for this, you do want to run a target newer than source. And this ensures that the updated versions of the object from the target, which in this case will be the sandbox that you are going to refresh, it makes sure that you don't have any versions of the object that will potentially be lost when you blow away that sandbox. So again, we do advise that you run the target newer than source to prevent any type of data loss. Okay, now we're moving on to the filtering option. So typically, customers are very inclined to try and compare their entire account in one go. We strongly advise against that. Not only because your NetSuite account will have thousands of custom objects, but also because of the NetSuite limitations. And that is, it can only analyze data set of less than 1,000 objects within a safe search. And whenever you try to run a comparison on the entire account, you do hit that limitation, and any information that comes after that 1,000 will essentially be truncated. So we've provided multiple filtering options to help you limit the number of results set from any one comparison. The first one is the customization type. So you can use the customization type when you want to do a comparison by object. So for example, if you want to compare all body fields, all client scripts, all user event scripts, all workflows, you can select that customization type, and the system will search for all all the customizations of that type in your source and compare it to all the customization of that type in your target account. The second one is the change request, and this is the one that we're going to be demoing today. For this option, the comparison is only run against the objects that are included on the change request. So if you have 5 customizations that are on your change request, when you run that environment compare, it will only search for that 5 objects in the source and in the target and do a comparison between the two. The third one is the safe search. So we do allow you to create a safe search to do comparison. And this is typically for large deployments that you have to make. So if you have a bundle and that bundle contains 500 objects and you want to do a comparison there, one of the things that I would recommend is that you use the safe search. In order for this safe search to show up as an option on environment comparison, there's specific guidelines that you do need to follow. And those guidelines are listed under the field level help, and I will show you that during our demo. But if you don't follow that guideline, you may not see the search. And I'll go through what that guideline entails when I'm doing the demo as well. The other thing is quick add. So if you have sporadic objects that you want to compare, let's say you have 5 workflows, 10 body fields, and a number of scripts, you can use the quick add feature to directly add these to the environment comparison request. So whenever you run the comparison, it will only run it based on the objects that you have under the quick add option. And this is similar to the change request option, but you can include as many things that you want here. We also have an include children option, which whenever you check that option, it will display any child objects that are associated with the customizations that are listed under the quick add feature. So these two, 4 and 5, work together. And lastly, we have bundles to exclude. Um, and what this option allows for is if you want to exclude components of a specific bundle, you can simply include the bundle ID on the comparison form, and that will, whenever you execute the environment compare, it will further filter it by removing anything that's related to that bundle you specified. Okay, so let's look at the change management deployment validation. So utilizing the environment comparison tool through change management ensures that all deployments are done correctly and completely. The first thing is that you would want to run the comparison. And this option, again, as I mentioned before, is available standalone, or you can route it through change management by using the button that's available under the deployment validation tab on your change request. So when you're ready to run the environment comparison, and typically you want to do this before the approval, you do run a target Newton source to make sure again that no critical updates are in your target account will be overwritten when you do your deployment. And for this portion, you're going to run it before you do the actual deployment. Okay. After you've approved the change request and you've done your deployment changes, you are going to run an environment comparison again, but for this time, you're going to run a differential comparison. And this is to make sure that the versions of the objects are the same in both environment. And in this case, ideally, you do want the results to be blank because then it will mean there's no differences between the two versions. The second thing is once you run a differential comparison, a log is created and attached to your change request. And this is there for your any future reference. You can always go back to see what was compared and what was the result of that comparison. The other thing is that we allow for multiple comparisons to be done within any given deployment. So if you have a number of things that are going to be deployed to your production environment, you can run the comparison multiple times until the objects are fully synced between the target and the source account. And one thing for you to remember when doing that is to go in and do trigger the spiders or trigger the re-spider now to make sure the documentation is fully up to date whenever you run your comparison. Okay, the last thing we have is communicating results to your developers. So again, whenever you run an environment comparison, a log is created and automatically linked to the change request for future reference. The second thing is that if there is no inconsistencies when you run your comparison, the report ideally will be blank. If there are actual inconsistencies, then the system will create an Excel file with the information. So we do expect that the deployment engineer will go and review that Excel file that's attached to the environment comparison log. They can also edit that log if necessary. If not, they can just leave it. And they can also document any issue resolution on the log itself. So if that inconsistency showed something that was wrong in either of the account and they had to go and take action to resolve that, then they can document that information on the log, which will be attached to the change request for future use. Okay, and they can also go in and close that log if no further action item is required. Once the changes have been implemented, the deployment engineer would do a re-spider now to ensure that the documentation is fully up to date and rerun a final environment compare just to make sure that everything has been deployed correctly as desired. And just to do a recap of, or just to go over what we are actually going to do a walkthrough of, is one, you can run a standalone environment comparison. So you just go in, open the compare tool, set the source and target accounts, apply your filter, run the compare, and export the results. Okay. The second way is to create an actual change request. And once you create the change request and attach the customization, you go in and you run your comparison. Strongpoint will then attach the result to the CR, and you can take whatever action that needs to be taken based on the results that have been provided. Once that has been done, you can go in and approve that change request. And after approving the change request, your deployment will take place. And after your deployment is done, you go in and rerun the comparison by doing a differential comparison to make sure that everything was brought over correctly into your production environment. And again, ideally, you would want this result to be blank. Okay, so now let's proceed to our walkthrough. All right, so in our environment, I already have a change request that I went in and created. And I've also attached a few customization to this change request. So I have two workflows, one entity field and an item option field that I've attached to this. And from here, I'm going to go and run the environment compare. So if you go to the deployment validation tab of the change request, there's a button that says run compare tool. Once you click on that button, it will take you to the environment compare account. And on here, what you'd want to do is give a name to, to the comparison that you are going to do. So if you run a standalone comparison, then this name will automatically be attached to the Excel file from the information that you export. Or if you're doing it from a change request, such as the one I'm doing right now, it will attach it to the change request using this name. So this name is actually a mandatory field. Once you do that, you identify what your source account is. And for this one, I'm going to use our demo account. And you can add this information. You can add new accounts here as you go along. As you can see, there's an option for new, and it allows you to enter the information for that account. So the most important things here are the name of the account. You don't want to give it whatever name you have within your environment. And you want to add the account ID. And this is very important because the comparison is actually using this. So if the account ID is incorrect, you will get an error message when you try to run that comparison. So I've already gone in and added the account ID. So I'm going to enter my email, which is my login to NetSuite. And I'm also going to enter my password. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to do is select a role. So there are 3 roles that are available. You can use your full access role, your administrator role, or your flow developer role. Okay, and you have to use a role that you actually have. So if I'm going to select a role that I don't have in the account, again, I'm going to get an error message. So I'm just going to select the administrator role here. And then I'm going to choose my target account. So in this case, I'm going to choose our customer testing account. And once you've populated the information here, you don't need to repeat the information if it's the same thing again. Okay, so the only thing you need to enter is your account ID. If your credentials are different for this account, then you do need to enter that information. But if your information is the same, then you can just leave it blank and it will pull the information from what you entered for the source. Okay, now let's go to our filtering options. So here we have a number of options that you can use. One, as I mentioned before, is the customization type, in which you can select the object type that you want. So if you want body fields, or if you want to compare bundles, or If you want to compare client scripts, anything you want, you can search through here and you can limit the search by that. The next thing is our change request, as I mentioned before. And as you can see, this automatically pulled over the change request number because I initiated the comparison from this change request. So it automatically pulled this number. And what this will do when I run this comparison, it's only going to compare these objects that are listed on the change request. Okay, the next thing is the get items from search. And again, like I said, this search needs to be very specific in order to show up in here. Okay, and if you click on the field level help, you will see where it's fully documented what is needed to be in the search in order for it to show up in here. So you need to make sure that all of these things are satisfied whenever you're creating your search. Okay. And then you have your comparison type. So you have the target nearer than source, or you have the diff. For today's demo, we're going to be running a diff between the two accounts. You also have quick add. So you can come here in this quick add option. And you can add any customization that you want. So all the custom objects that are in your account is already listed here. So if you want to add something additional, you can select that option here and include it in your quick add. Or you can use only your quick add to do the comparison. In this case, it will do a comparison between the change request as well as this option that I've added to the quick add. And as you can see, you have the include children option here, which will include any child objects that are related. The next thing is your bundles to exclude. So if you want to exclude a particular bundle, let's say I want to exclude the Strongpoint bundle, all I need to do is enter the Strongpoint bundle ID here, 36969. And when I run the compare, it will add a further filter. It will add a further filter to exclude anything that it sees is a component of this bundle. Okay, so this is all the information that you need to enter. So let's go ahead and we're going to run a compare. And you get our awesome graphics to look at. Okay, so this is typically your results set, and what it looks like. It gives you a list of all the things that are contained in the source account, as you can see here. And then it gives you all the things that are contained in your target account, as you can see here. And then it gives you a diff, which is essentially a difference between the two accounts. And here is your export results option, where you can export this to Excel to analyze it. But this log is going to be attached to the change request, which we'll review in a minute. So if you can see here, we're comparing the workflows. You have a diff overview, and it gives you just an overview of what the difference is. And as you can see, for these two, it's not seen where these exist in the target account, so it tells me does not exist in target. So I know if I log into my customer tested account, I'm not going to see this entity field or this item option field. And then in this diff field option, it provides you with what the differences are. So we're going to review this B2C lead nurturing workflow. So if you click on the show hide option, it will give you information on what is actually different between the two accounts. Sorry. So if you have anything in red, as you might have here, that means that it exists in the source account. If you have anything in green, then it points to what is in the target account. Okay, so what this is telling me here is that for this workflow, on the record type, the name there is a difference between the name in the target and the source account. So the name is one thing in the source, but in the target, it has an additional QA on it. The second thing that this is telling me is that the Spring collection catalog state has actions that are in the target account. As you can see, these are all in green. That is not in the source account. Okay, and we can validate this in a minute. So as you can see, there is an action under the Spring Collection catalog state that says send email, and it's saying that send email action is not in the source account. So we're currently in the source account, and I'm just going to quickly review that workflow. So here is a copy of the workflow. And also, before we go to the state and the action, I'm going to show you the name. Let's just refresh this. So we'll just review this first. Here we go. So as you can see, the record type only says customer. According to our environment compare in our target account, it says customer QA, and we're going to check that in a minute as well. So just to show you that difference. Additionally, it's saying we do have the Spring Collection catalog here, but it doesn't see a send email action. And as you can see, there's no send email action here in the source account. But as far as this is concerned, in the target account, you should see a send email. So let's go into our target account, and we're going to just validate that information. So we are in customer testing. So let me just quickly switch over. And from customer testing, I'm going to check that workflow. And just to make sure it's the B2C lead nurturing workflow. So this B2C lead nurturing workflow. And first thing, let's check the name. So as you can see, the name here for the record type says customer QA. And that's what is showing us, that this QA is a difference between the accounts. And the next thing that we're going to check is for the Spring Collection catalog. As you can see, there's a send email action. So it showed us where it's seen this in the target account, but it's not seen it in the source account. And that's kind of how you go ahead and you do your environment compare to validate your information. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my demo account as soon as I see it. Okay, so now I'm back in the demo account, and I'm going to show you how the system captured the fact that you ran this environment compare. So I'm just going to go back to my change request and do a refresh here. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the deployment validation, and as you can see, it logged this environment compare information. Okay, and we're going to view the log that it created. So this is what the log looks like. Again, it gives you the date, the name of the comparison that you did. It tells you what the source account is, or what the target account is, the number of records, that account that you did a comparison with, as well as the comparison type that was done. Okay, and additionally, if you go to files, you will see where it also created an Excel file of the comparison that was done. And I will show you what that looks like in a little bit. But with this log, there's a number of things that you can do. So if there's any action item to be done, and if that action was already taken, your developer or whomever can go and document the resolution. So they can enter what their findings were, what they had to do, what they had to resolve, and then they can close this. So anybody comes and they view this change request, they will see that yes, you did a comparison. yes, we found that an object was missing. We went and we did another migration to push the object over, so you can document that information here and you can close it. And once you save this, then that information again will be saved to the change request. And the last thing I want to show you is if you do want to see, actually analyze the information that you got using Excel, this is what the exported result looks like. So again, it shows you the different things that you compared, and it gives you all the differences that are there between the objects. Okay. And and that's the end of what I wanted to go through. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks so much, Romana. There is one question that has come in about what you're allowed to compare. So in the environment comparison, are you allowed to compare NetSuite setup preferences?
Yes, so we've recently added that capability. You are allowed to go in and run setup preferences between two accounts. There are some limited exceptions there, but for the most part, you can compare your preferences.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's any more. Nope, that's it. So, hey guys, thanks so much for joining. There's a lot of folks on the webinar here who have come to numerous webinars. So really appreciate your attendance, and we really hope that there was value. I know everybody here is pretty much a customer and has been using Strongpoint, and this has been great for a refresher and to get, notification of some maybe new feature functionality. Thanks so much. Have a great day.